hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
I'm just hopping in here for a second. Feel free to test out if you need to share your screen or anything else. Julie's just wrapping up the prior session and she'll be here at 3.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Everything okay?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just tossing up whether I should share my screen, but I don't think I need to because it's going to be really short. So
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
No need to, it's fine. And I'm going to leave so that Julie can come here and introduce both of you in 4 minutes.
Okay. Do we break
Awesome.
down?
And is sound and light all good from your end?
You both sound perfect.
Okay.
Cool.
Amazing. Feel free to ping me on the chat if you need anything else.
Okay.
Great.
Cool. Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thanks.
Is that too bright?
No. The light just turned on in the last minute. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, so it's working. That's good.
Yeah. Is it? Does it look fine? Like, is this the right? I was scared to touch it in case it decides because I was looking a bit like.
That looks good. Looks good.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
So will we have people on the chat? Are we supposed to be checking the chat as well?
I think so, yeah. We'll just check it as we go.
Oh, can people see us?
I think so.
Oh, no. Okay. Sorry about that. We're just doing a little warm up.
Hi.
Hello.
Good to see you guys from Seattle. Still a place we have to go visit.
Yes. We're in New York, so hello from New York. Ooh, San Fran. Hi.
Is it still light out for you guys? It's the afternoon, isn't it? You can see how dark it is here behind me.
Feels like midnight.
Yeah.
First issue of the day.
Hey.
Hi guys, just your cruise director over here was trying to get back and forth from sessions. Anyway, hi ladies, how are you?
Hi, good.
Good, I'm not stressed at all. Totally good.
You look very chilled, very cool and collected.
Totally cool, calm, and collected. No big deal. Well, anyway, real quick, ladies, good to see you. We just came off an incredible workshop with Janice. We were just over on the other side, and we were talking all about how to get money, right? So for everyone just joining us, the second question that we always get asked is like, cool, how do I grow my brand? And I think for this session specifically, we were so excited to talk to you ladies because one of the problems we face is that the average revenue among all women-owned businesses is $142,000, according to American Express. So the good news is that has been increasing. The bad news is we want to see a lot more women business owners in the 1 million plus threshold. So one of the issues we see is that, like, how do you do that? So when you're branding, marketing, advertising, accounting, finance, and maybe even scrubbing the toilets and designing your own jewelry, it can be super challenging to figure out how do you actually grow your business, not just at like a 10% year on year, but like double, 100%, 200% year on year. So for everyone tuning in, these are the GrowthBoss ladies, and they've like figured this out through just like multiple entrepreneurship journeys and their backgrounds. So we want to turn this over to you guys to tell us like how to do it. Break it down for us, chat it out, and like what do we need to know so that like we're not sitting here like we want the ladies to get paid, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So Deirdre, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first, and then over to you, and then I'm going to disappear and then just pop on and off as needed to kind of help answer any questions.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much. And hi to everyone. I've been loving seeing, who's been hopping on from Manhattan and California and Oakland. Awesome. So I guess I'm just going to sort of, if that's okay with you, Julie, I'm just going to jump straight into sort of my journey and everything and how I've kind of, I guess, found myself in New York. So for those of you who can probably tell from our accents, we are Aussies, we are Australian, and we're now living in New York. I think someone was saying they could hear the sirens and the city noises. Yep, so you can tell we are in New York City, in Manhattan. And I guess, gosh, it's been a journey for us getting to this point. So I actually started my entrepreneurial journey around 8 years ago. And a little bit of, I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible because I know we have a lot of content to get through. But, for anyone else who can feel me, I'm a bit of, Asian nerd, first migrants in Australia, and with that comes sort of some of the challenges of straddling the whole expectations that your parents set on you, by that their whole we moved all the way across continents, across to another country for me and my brother, right, to give us a better education, to give us more opportunities. So that was kind of the context that I grew up in, and I think there are probably some others on here who probably feel that as well, who can probably vibe with me. And so with that, I was kind of to toe the line, to go on the path. I was meant to become a doctor. That didn't happen, obviously. I think my dad is still disappointed to this day that didn't happen. But I did the second best thing, which was I studied a law degree. So I studied a law degree and then went into corporate. So I went into investment bank, funnily enough. So that was kind of like my early journey. And then I remember there was this point, it was like pretty early on in my career, and I was quite fortunate to be put on this pretty big project in the bank. It was one of those once in a decade type things. Where I was sitting in the room and I was actually put on a project to lead a stream of work. And so what that meant was that I was actually exposed to a lot of super senior people in the bank, all the way up to the CEO. And I was sitting in the room and I could just see, even at that point, the politics that was getting played in front of me. And, you know, you kind of, it's one of those things where you hear about it and you know that stuff exists, but until you're like in the same room as these people, seeing it happen in front of you, it didn't feel real until that point. And I looked at that point and I was like, oh my, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do the whole climb the corporate ladder thing. So I think it was at that point that I decided, you know what, this isn't for me, so I'm going to have to find what that thing is. At the same time, my then boyfriend, he's now my husband, was studying medicine. So he was going down that path, but he was hating it. He was really not enjoying it. And we just moved out. He loved cooking, and in fact, he loved baking. And baking, he was perfecting this particular dessert that I absolutely loved. We used to go on to this particular restaurant just for this dessert. And because we moved out, we couldn't go and visit this restaurant anymore, or as easily, I should say. And so he started to try to perfect it for me. And so from there, we were just in this space. And I think a lot of you can probably vibe with this, where you're kind of like at this crossroads, and for us, it was like, well, why don't we try it? Why don't we just try starting our own business? Why don't we create the place that we would want to go to, create the types of desserts that we would want to eat? So from there came our first business called The Choc Pot in Sydney, based in Sydney. We have a couple of locations now, and they are still open and operating, and we are remotely running it from all the way over here from New York. And so that was about 8 years ago. And since then, you know, I'll kind of fast forward a little bit. We've since opened up burger bars. So we have a couple of those as well, also in Sydney. And then, so I was still, you know, because, and I know a lot of you can feel me that, you know, I still have to somewhat fund the business. So I was still working in corporate, and that was how I met Bonner. And before I go into sort of how the journey that Bonner and I have been on, I just want to kind of pause a little bit, because throughout our journey, we're going to talk to you definitely about our story. And please, if you have questions, drop them in the chat and we'll definitely pick them up. But throughout our journey, you know, there's just been so many things that we've learned, obviously. And one of the big things that is with the Choc Pot, it was one of those classic cases of, you know what, we know what we're doing, and sometimes you have to be naive. Otherwise, I think a lot of us know that if we kind of knew what we were going to get into by starting a business, we probably wouldn't do it. So it's kind of always a good thing that, you know, we were naive in a way, in terms of what was required in starting and actually running and growing a business. And I remember, you know, those early days of the Choc Pot, you know, because we loved products that we were making, and we were convinced that, sorry, you don't hear the sirens behind me. We were convinced that because we knew we had the best product out there, that people would just magically find out about us, would just magically hear about us, and would become banging our doors down. That's just like, you know, we were that confident about it. And then as it always usually happens, you know, we open the doors expecting this flood of people, and crickets. Nothing. Oh my God, guys, the pain, this was like the loneliness that I felt. And I talk about this all the time because, you know, we're having to pay rent, where, you know, we had a small team of people, so we were having to pay wages, all of these fixed costs, supplies, etc. And we were making no money. There were days where we were just selling a handful of coffees in the early days. And it was one of the loneliest times. And I remember that, you know, and this is kind of, we'll talk a bit about you know, the mindset shifts that you not only have to make, but also how you sort of, as smartly, because I don't know if I would recommend that path in terms of going to market. I don't think I would, because it was a lot of risk to take on something that was completely untested. But what that really taught me, definitely, that journey was all about perseverance. Like, how do you persevere? How do you've kind of committed to this thing. We've invested a lot of money, a lot of time to do this, and we were kind of like, we were committed, and we had to persevere. So we really had to find a way to grow. It was kind of like do or die, right? And I think, you know, now, like in these days, we're kind of fortunate that we can have online businesses, that the investment is a lot lower, that we can test and iterate and learn, and Bonna's going to go through a lot more of that in detail. But I just wanted to kind of point out, like, the difference between my first business, the Chop-Up, where it was like a grind, and we had to find and hack our way to growth. And the way that we did that for the Chop-Up was definitely through influencer marketing. So at that time, you know, 7-8 years ago, it was when the Instagram platform was just kind of sort of starting. It was kind of like, it was an interesting time, because it was almost that transition from blogging being the big thing. So we were getting, you know, bloggers in, but more and more, even they were transitioning onto Instagram, onto this new platform that I had no idea what they were talking about. I had no idea what it was. And at the time, we had a staff member who was like, you guys have to get on it. You have to get onto Instagram. We were like, oh, we don't know what that is. So she just set up her profile and away we went. But we really rode that wave. We really rode that wave of Instagram growing. So we were fortunate at that time. But without the perseverance, the resilience to make that happen, like, I don't know, you know, that would have been a failed business for sure. So we're going to, based on our experiences, we are going to be talking to you about how to do it the smart way, hopefully the smarter way, I should say, than, you know, what we did with my first business with the Chalkpot. So then rewind it, fast forward, to a few years past that, a few years ago as well, I should say, and that was when I met Bonna, and we worked in the same bank. We were actually in the innovation team, funnily enough. So we were like tinkering with a lot of new kind of, you know, things like AI and blockchain and things like that, which was really cool. And I remember that, so we'd probably been working together for, like, I don't know, a year, 18 months or something. It felt like probably a long time. But I remember coming in one day, and I hate shopping, by the way. And I had spent the night before. I only ever shop sort of when we transition seasons, so going into summer or going into winter. And so I think it was at that time we were going into winter, and I had just spent the whole night trying to find stuff for work. And I think I was on like page 99 of this e-commerce store, and I was like, I just cannot do this. I just cannot. So the next day I come in, and Bono and I were in, you know, we sit next to each other, and I was just like, OMG, Bono, like, this is what I spent my night doing. I just wish be something out there that would just tell me what to buy, that doesn't cost as much as I imagine that personal stylist costs. That was just automated. I didn't have to talk to anyone, you know, that you just knew me. You just knew me and would just tell me what to buy. And that was kind of the start of our own entrepreneurial journey together. So I guess, Bono, I might hand over to you after my very long-winded intro. If you wanted to pick up the story from there.
Yeah, thanks, Deirdre. And hi, everyone. I'm Bonna, as Deirdre said, and I am Deirdre's co-founder. And before I continue, I know it's a cliffhanger. You're like, what happened next? Please tell us. But before I get into that a little bit, I just wanted to, I guess, the fact that we are on Ladies Who Launch, and, you know, the co-founder title is something that I'm very, very proud of, because if any of you guys in you know, listening along tonight can have co-founders yourselves, you would know that it's a very unique relationship. There's a very special chemistry in this relationship, and the one that I have with Deirdre is obviously one that I value very, very highly. This journey itself is extremely tumultuous, it's extremely uncertain, and there's just an intense comfort that comes from having a co-founder. So before, I would suggest anyone looking to launch their own business or continue with the business, if you can find someone who is on the same page as you with values, but pretty complementary when it comes to skills and experience, definitely having a co-founder is the secret weapon to doing this thing well. So as Deidre said, when we met, I had a very, very different, start to entrepreneurship. Up until that point, I'd obviously been in corporate for most of my career. Entrepreneurship was something that I was curious about, but when I met Deidre, she came in frustrated that day. I have an experience. I have a background as a personal stylist, so I was already interested from a fashion perspective, listening to her complaints. And got me intrigued, and we started working on this idea together. I knew that there was no one else I would rather do this with, because it was someone that complemented me in so many ways, and I could very confidently start my entrepreneurship journey. So there I was, part-time entrepreneur, full-time banker, trying to work out this fashion technology problem. So we thought, okay, so it was exciting because obviously we were our own customer. So, women, especially working in this sort of environment where clothing was a very important part of your personal brand, you did enjoy expressing yourself through it, but getting it just seemed to be such a painful experience and had sucked the joy out of it for a lot of people. So I remember talking about this, and really what we realized, and definitely using Deidre's experience with the Chalk Pot, was like, okay, so what is the main question that we're looking to answer here? And please let us know in the chat, where you are at with your sort of business journey. But the main question that you're sort of asking is, you think it's a great idea, it's bee's knees, but is it something, is what you want to launch into the world actually a good idea? Like, is it really? Like, that's the fundamental question, right, that we're looking to answer. Like, we got excited about it. We were like, is this really something that other people want? And how do you figure that out? Like, that's what this is ultimately about. And it's really kind of going, okay, well, let's think about this, as Deidre said, smartly, analytically, and creatively. So we were like, okay, so what is the comfort that we need to, what is the criteria that we think we can fulfill to be comfortable that, yes, this is something that we should put money into, and really launch out into the world. So to help answer that, we really need to think about, okay, what are some assumptions that we're making, right? As we get excited with our idea and like, oh, maybe we could do this and we could build it this way. What are some assumptions that we're making about who our target customer, or what our target customer is going to think, feel, and do in actually using our product and our solution? So that's why it's almost like, so you think about, okay, so you almost like list those things out. It's like, okay, so these things have to be true for my idea and my business to be a success. So we decided to call this particular idea, we went to brunch as we do on Saturdays or Sundays, and we said, okay, right, what do we want to call this thing firstly? And we decided to go with Goal Digger. So not, as a play, we're trying to be clever, for GOAL, digger, and we really wanted this to be for that woman who was, like pretty much Deidre, right? So she's like, she's got these goals, she's really kind of ambitious, she wants to, do all of these things, and she's going to look really good doing it. And, that's where the fashion bit came in. So we're like, yes, goal digger. Kimberly, love it. We loved it. We were like, we're so in love with this. Everybody's going to want this. There's nothing like this in the market. And then you went kind of go back to say, okay, hang on a minute. So what are the assumptions that we're making? And the idea was, well, surely part of the reason why Deidre's on page 99 is because she's just looking at models that are like 6 foot, Caucasian, in this kind of very white background, and then none of it matches kind of her reality, right? She's trying to work really hard to imagine what it's going to look like on her, she's not 6 foot and Caucasian in a white at all times. So we thought, okay, we're going to contextualize these items on, we're going to use micro influencers, we're going to style these items, and you're going to follow influencers who look like you and who have your style, and that's what's going to make the purchasing experience seamless and fun and all of those things. Like, yes, it's amazing. So then you make all of these assumptions, right? That everyone is going to want to shop that way. Everyone's going to get value from that, and they're going to download the app, and then they're going to follow the influencers, and they're going to, so all of these things. So you really systematically map out and say, okay, for this goal digger to be successful, this many women are going to have to go through these steps. So we map that out. And then what you do is so let's test these assumptions. Let's design some really, really basic experiments that's going to give us comfort that this is going to happen. So then what we did was with Gold Digger, we designed basically the end-to-end experience. It was very manual. We might even share a video of our first marketing video, which is absolutely hilarious. That's right, Rani, hypothesis testing. We fully nerd out on these things, so we're going to try to keep it kind of really simple, but that's exactly what you're doing. You're forming some hypothesis around what your target customer is going to do. Imagine in their lifestyle. And for us, it wasn't too hard because we were our target customer. So we mapped it out. And then so the first thing you do is design your experiment. The second thing you do is, okay, what currency are you testing for? And currency can mean everything from customers giving you their time, giving you their email address or other personal details, but most importantly, giving you their money. So we wanted to go for that and say, okay, we want to be comfortable that people will actually shop and transact in this way. So we built out the entire end-to-end flow manually. It was just us in the background, there was no AI, no algorithm, it was just us in the background. And then we built it out, and then we said, okay, so our currency is going to be that people are actually going to give us their money and shop for that dress or that top or that blazer, right? And then the third thing that needs to go into this equation is the metrics. So you go, okay, so we're going to say we're talking to women in this particular target market. This is the experiment. This is the currency we're testing. Now, what is the metric? What are we comfortable with as a team to, what does success look like? So we decided that it was going to be 60%. So 6 out of 10 women, or 60 out of 100 women that we tested this with would make a transaction on the platform that we built. Platform. It could be 80% for you, it could be 20% for you. We just felt like 60% was the right figure, for many reasons. And then you just continue to do that until you either get to a point where you're like, you know what, we're consistently at 20%. This is not going to work. And that's where we got to with Gold Digger. So this is where, you iterate. You iterate very, very rapidly. You cannot, as wedded as I was to the cool brand name and how fun this is going to be and all of that, the business model just did not stack up because the customer was not transacting. They were adding to cart, they were doing all sorts of fun things like that, but they weren't giving us the currency that we were after. And then so after a certain point in time, we decided, you know what, we need to iterate to something else. Now, the great thing about doing it this way is you learn a lot from this, where you're like, okay, you know what we're seeing is people are adding to cart, they're not purchasing. So what they want is actually a more end-to-end solution. Right, so we go back to Deirdre's original problem of, someone just do this for me, right? So we were like, okay, it's the endless browsing that's causing the issue. People are browsing, wish listing, adding to cart, but not purchasing. They're getting just tired from all of the choice. And at the time, Stitch Fix was really blowing up in America. So this is such a full circle moment for us because Katrina Lake was here doing the keynote, and she was, she was trailblazing, like, and Australia is such a fast follower when it comes to the States, and we were like, that's what it is. And if women want the experience of having something selected for them, they don't have to see a personal stylist like myself, they don't have to pay those fees, they get that experience, surprise and delight, amazing, genius. And some of our testing had validated that. So we thought, you know what? So here we are now. We're not having brunch. We're having burgers. We're having burgers at this place called Z Pickle. And we're like, yes, this is what we should do. And you had just listened to this podcast episode. And so what are we going to call this new thing? Because we're mainly part of the brand. And she said, you know what do you think about Moxbox? I went, Moxbox? What does that mean? And we really now branded it around, so this is an American term, the Moxie, having, Moxie. And we just loved that it was, for our target customer, someone who's really courageous, plucky, a go-getter. And again, she needs to look good, right? She needs to look good when she's doing all of the things. So we said, and then it's a box. It's a monthly or a quarterly or a 6-monthly box of stylist curated items for you and your style. So we thought, yeah, this is what we're iterating to. And again, it's a rinse and repeat, the exact same process. As Rani said, you form your hypothesis for this new kind of solution, you test it, and which we did. So at that point, I'd got to a point in my career where I said, I really want to take a break and really look at this full time. I had such a great time doing this part-time with Gold Digger, and I thought, I really want to give this a go. So I was privileged enough to be able to take, a career break from my full-time banking career and just work on this full-time and what's full-time. And again, we went back to some of our target customers, ran experiments, had some metrics that we were wanting to hit. And now with this business model, it was all about recurring revenue. We needed people to be consistently buying, basically subscribe to the service. And that's where this one fell over, because again, people were really excited about the first 2, maybe 3 boxes. But by the 4th box, you're working really hard to get people re-engaged, and they're like, this is just not a sustainable thing. So from a, that's, again, we were able to get that evidence. As much as we loved the idea and we loved kind of wanting to bring this to life, we were, I guess, that was another point of iteration for us to say, okay, this isn't quite it either. And then I guess finally the 3rd iteration, which is what we moved to New York with, we were so excited. We said, okay, let's get the best of Gold Digger and Moxbox. And it's all about, women still love to browse. They still love that experience, but how do we make it curated? So how do we basically create the Netflix of shopping and incentivize them? So bringing a reward system for purchasing on our platform. And that was For You was born. And again, it was a very, very complicated system we would have had to build. So we did it all very manually to begin with. We have sketched out our prototypes. We had really, really simple things that we just hit the streets here in New York with, tested with our target customers of college students as well as women working in corporate. Got a bunch of evidence and data that unfortunately didn't, we did have some good successes, but it was just not compelling enough for us to then go and look for funding of at least $500,000 to even get started. So then we had to make a pretty difficult decision to say, okay, well, the evidence here from testing all of this really does not point to something that's going to be viable. And that's when we sort of had our first pivot, because we said, oh, it's really disappointing that this isn't kind of working out. But in talking to all of these fashion brands, we'd realized that the brands actually had a problem around inventory management and warehousing. So then we did a very random but very big pivot into logistics for these, emerging fashion labels in the States. And, as a full circle moment, we decided to call it Moxbox Logistics. And we were sort of like really starting to build that out, but then COVID happened. This year, and as you probably all attest to this, it really sort of, I think, changed up a few things for us. Okay, how do you think about product market fit? What does that look like when testing a hypothesis? When you say a question for later, did you want to do that as part of Q&A, Rani? Happy to answer that now as well. But yeah.
Maybe just answer that, Bonner.
Oh, sure. Okay, cool. So while we are talking about, so for those of you who are listening along and haven't heard of the term product market fit, it's really kind of like, if you think about it very simply and almost logically, you go, think about Deidre as the example. So someone who's got a problem, right? So an individual's come in with a problem and she said, blah, I hate this. So that's, okay, as an entrepreneur, you go, what is the solution that fits that problem? Sorry, I should step back. Prior to that, there's a customer and there's a problem. So a customer problem fit. So not everyone is going to have that problem. Some women love shopping. Some women love page 99. But that particular customer who's Deidre has that specific problem. And you go, okay. Then you go, that's a customer to problem fit. Then you think about the problem and go, okay, there's about 20 ways I can solve that problem for Deidre, but which is the most compelling solution? And there's a whole process that you follow whereby brainstorm all the different solutions and find the one that's basically going to give her what she wants, either quickest, cheapest, whatever is valuable to her. So in this case for Deidre, it was like the quickest because she's like an efficiency queen, right? So it's going to be digital. It's got to be, something that she can access straight away, and it's got to give her value pretty much straight away. So it's like, okay. So that's the solution we went with from 20 different. And then what Rani's talking about is, the solution really is your product, right? So you've got your product that you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the thing that I'm going to bring to life. I'm going to build it. I'm going to buy it, however you decide. Then product market fit is about, okay, Deidre's one person. How many Deidres are out there? That's your market. Deidre, as in obviously not just her, but people like her with the same problem who want that problem solved in this way. So that's where you go, that's the product to market fit. And a lot of businesses don't get to that, including ours, like, the multiple ones that we've done, because it definitely had customer problem fit, it had problem solution fit, but it did not have a product to market fit. And it really terms of testing hypothesis, again, it really comes down to what your business model is. And for us, we needed a certain number of people on the platform for that to be viable, right? So we needed a certain number, and just the way that we had built the solution, there just wasn't enough people. So enough people in that market who wanted to shop in that way, whether that's Moxbox, whether that's For You, or whether that's Gold Digger. So that's why, you really want to form the hypothesis to say, yep, I am going to get 10% of my market, of my total market is going to be willing to shop in this way, in a consistent way. That's when you've got product market fit. There's a lot of different currencies that you can test, but ultimately it's about, are they purchasing from you? Are they returning to purchase from you? Are they referring their friends? Are they actually choosing you as the destination to shop? So that's a really, really high level answer, but please let me know if that makes sense. Okay, cool. Makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Vanna. So I guess if you've if you stayed on long enough, that was kind of our journey in terms of looking at whether it was worth building that brand, right? Whether it was worth investing the amount of money that we would have needed to find funding, go and find developer, all those things to actually then bring this product to market. So what Vanna was kind of talking about was really, how do we test and learn and quickly and cheaply, so that before we actually invest that money in. And that's why I kind of draw parallels between my first business, which was a chalk pot, where we just kind of went blindly straight in. We invested in, and all the things, all the fit out, everything, like it was a lot of money, versus then doing it kind of called the wiser way, maybe, of actually testing it before you actually, try to grow it. Okay, because then you know that you have a business that, as I said, has product market fit. That's how you first build your brand. You have to get market fit first. So we really just wanted to share almost our journey with you on that, so that you could kind of go, sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay. How do you be okay with failing fast, failing forward, so that you're not wasting a lot of time and a lot of money on something that you think is cool, customer, but there might not be enough of you out there to make your product or your business viable. So that's really the first thing that I hope you got from all of that. And so for those of you who do find it, it's super exciting, because then it's really about, how do you really grow it from there, right? Market it. And this is where I get really excited, because there's some really cool ways that you can do it. And the way that we like to approach it is kind of different. I'm not going to lie, because it's really anchored in human connection, tribe building. And, because I know that a lot of us out there, especially if you're a tech entrepreneur, you probably hear all the, the growth hacking ways, the marketing ways, and that's cool. And that definitely has its time and place, but it's not always going to be sustainable for you to actually build a sustainable brand. And hopefully all of you launchers, like, that's what you're after. You're after that sustainable brand. So what we actually talk about, and we actually do a boot camp on this, is how do you build your irresistibly contagious product offer? And I'm going to break this down, because it's a lot of words, a lot of syllables, but it can be broken down into its component parts, right? So you think about irresistible, what does that mean? It means you literally can't resist it, right? Even if you wanted to, you don't have the budget, you don't have the time, whatever it is, you cannot resist going and getting your credit cards. That's what it means to be irresistible. So what that means is that your value to cost ratio is incredibly value heavy. When your customer can see themselves doing it, they can see themselves getting the result that they're looking for, that what your product does, helps them solve for. When they can see that doing that, getting the results can happen for them, then it actually far outweighs all the fear, all the BS, all the excuses, everything else that kind of comes to mind, all of those buying objections. Then it's irresistible. Okay, you have something truly irresistible. And then we go to contagious, which is where this is kind of in line with sort of viral marketing in a way, because this is really where it's contagious, right? So it catches on with the virality. That is actually hard to stop. And what that means is that, when people get swept up in it, when, they're trying to resist, so first, we have something that's irresistible. So first they can't resist it, and then they can't help but infect others with it, right? It's now contagious. Then that's when you have an irresistibly contagious offer, which is super exciting. And this is what we want to get to, because that is how you actually build a sustainable business, because it starts to just market itself, which is really, really cool. And then the last piece is really about that product offer. And, we work with a lot of e-commerce businesses, a lot of product-based businesses, but this can apply very much to, if you have a tech business, because your platform, your technology, that is your product, right? And what I want to just highlight here is that your product offer is just so much more than the actual thing that you sell. It encompasses everything from how you show up to your audience to, your storefront, like your social media, and all the way through the buying process, through your sales funnel and after, right? Your product is just one piece of all of that. And so you have to kind of think about, you need to kind of solve for that whole experience. And that's why we're really intentful to say it's not actually about your product. And this was something that I learned even for the choc pot, right? It doesn't become about the desserts that we sell. Like, we knew that we had amazing desserts, but it's actually about the whole experience that we wrap around it. That's actually what's important. That's actually what becomes not only irresistible, but contagious. Right, so I just wanted to kind of break that down, because that's how we think, and our whole strategy is really anchored in how do you create this irresistibly contagious product offer. And then there are a couple of things that you need to know to be able to start to create this. Sorry, I'm just looking at the questions now, but we'll get back to those. Is that okay? Afterwards? Yeah. And so there are a couple of things that you need to know to start to create your irresistibly contagious product offer. So one, which is like the foundation for everything that you do, is knowing your customers' point A and their point B. Right? Point A and point B. So where are they now? What is their point A, and where do they want to get to? So what is that result that they're looking for, which is their point B? And some things, and you really want to think of it in terms of like symptoms, right? So what are they actually thinking and feeling now? So if we talk about gold digger, my I just want someone to solve this. I'm on page 99, I'm like clicking through it, not finding anything. I'm scrolling, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm thinking about how frustrated I am that I can't find anything because I can't actually seem to visualize what that would look on me. I don't, so that's what I'm thinking. So what are almost the symptoms of where your customer is now, to their point A, and then what are they saying and doing and thinking at their point B, right? Like how much, more stress-free or less stressed am I, or frustrated am I at point B when I can have my problem solved for, right? So that's the first bit, is what is your point A and what is that point B? Because if you know that, then all of your marketing messages, all of them, anchored in this point A and point B, become like, you can just roll them out like that, like clockwork. So that's the beauty. That's like kind of the foundation of what you need to know. And then you have to start thinking about, how do you get them? How do you actually get them from their point A to point B? And this is the journey. This is now the bridge that you're building to actually, in your marketing messages, to actually get them from the beginning point to the after point. And I kind of like to think about, because I nerd out on the psychological buying process and things like that. And what I've kind of condensed it down to is, how do we talk to the rational part of the brain and the irrational part of the brain? And now, when we think about the rational part of the brain, this is the part of the brain that is driven by logic and it's driven by analysis, right? The one that weighs up pros and cons. It weighs up the costs versus the values. This is the part of the brain that you need to convince that they feel like they've made the right rational decision, because you're talking about the results, right? You're talking about the results, the what and the how that they're going to get there. So to do that, you really have to be really arming them with the right mindset, skill set, tool set. So mindset It's really what is the frame of mind that the customer needs to be in order to achieve that result. And we all have one of two. We either have two types of products. We either have what we call a painkiller product, so we're moving someone away from pain. They're currently sitting in some kind of pain, and the mindset that they need to be in is to want to get out of that pain, because we can't help anyone. We can't get anyone to their point B if they are in a way like happy to continue seeing their pain. So that's a mindset that we have to get them in, is that they want to move away from it. And then, so that's a painkiller product. And then we have what we call vitamin products, which is, they might be quite happy where they are now, but they want more, right? They have an aspiration, they have a goal that they're looking to achieve. And so if this is the case, then the mindset that your customer has to be in is that that goal that they're looking to get to is actually not out of reach. It's actually attainable. So that's mindset. And then skill set is, very simply, what do they need to know to actually extract the practical value from the thing that you're selling? So if you're selling a gadget, it could be as simple as put the batteries in and turn it on, right? That's the skill set. That's what they need to know to do the thing, to use what you're selling, to get that to their point B, to get to their result. And then tool set is the thing that you sell. It's the product, it's the tech platform, or if you're like a coaching business or a service business, maybe it's all the different types of platform and software that they might need to cobble, or you help them cobble together to actually have them run their business, or whatever it is that they do, right? So that's all about mindset, skill set, tool set. And let me know, I'm continuing to look at the comments, but let me know if you have any questions about that. Let me know if that makes sense. I know I'm talking a bit fast because we're running out of time, but hopefully this is useful. So let me know if that is. And then we get to some of the exciting, interesting things, which is now talking to the irrational part of the brain. And this is where we're creating emotional triggers, because emotion is actually what makes people take action. That is the number one and almost the only thing that actually makes people take action. So we need to be talking to their emotions, right? We need to be getting them to feel something. And so there's a few ways that we help our clients do this. The first thing is that they need to see themselves doing it. Your customer needs to be able to see themselves, that's I don't know what's happening out there. But they need to be able to if you can paint the picture for them, okay, so that they can see themselves using your product, then you make that mental leap so much easier for them to just buy. They need to know that they don't need to be someone else. They don't need to be somewhere else. They don't need to fundamentally change who they are to achieve that point B, to that result that they're looking for. Oh, it looks like there's like a parade happening right outside. So you have to like paint the picture for your customers, not only on your website but all of your marketing. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then the second thing is, how do you create frequent triggers that you can actually tie your product to? And the example that I love to use here is that really loud? That's just New York for you. The example that I really love to talk about here is Kit Kat, right? Because we all know the campaign, have a break, have a Kit Kat. So for the longest time they were running that campaign. So they were banking on the fact that if you were taking a break, if someone was taking a break, that you would then immediately think about Kit Kat to go with it. But what was super interesting was that it worked for them for ages, and then their sales started flatlining. They started stagnating. So they knew they had to revive it. And the way they actually did that was to now link it to a more frequent trigger, a more obvious trigger, which was coffee. And so they linked Kit Kat to coffee instead, so that every time that someone was having a coffee, that was a trigger point for them to think about Kit Kat. So what I guess that's an example to kind of go like, how do you link what you're selling to an existing frequent trigger, so that when they are doing that thing, they cannot help but think about your business, your brand, your product. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, as you paint the picture and so that they can see themselves doing it, and you create, you're linking it to a frequent trigger, how do you evoke emotion, right? How do you evoke emotion? Because that, as I said, that is what makes people take the action. That's what makes people comment on your post, buy from you, download your freebie, take that next step that you want them to take. It's all about emotion. And so here again, it's really about, if you have a painkiller product, it's really about what is that emotion that they are feeling right now, stuck in their pain, and then how will it actually feel to get to their result, to that point B that you're promising them. Or if you have a vitamin product, it's really about that emotion that they feel having reached that result, right? Getting to that aspiration, to that goal. Kind of made that mindset, skill set shift, and you kind of armed them with with the tool set, with your product. How do they feel now being at their point B? When you know what that point B is, how you want your customers to feel, then you have to translate those emotion words into visuals, right? So that in the 3 seconds that your customer, your audience is on your feed or on your website, they can immediately connect with you and what you're doing and what you're trying to do. So that's kind of how I hope that makes sense. So let me know in the comments if that kind of made sense. But that's how we like to think about how to actually start to market your brand. It's really about, it's really anchored in understanding the psychological buying process. So I guess I'll stop there and just Bonnie, did you want to talk about how we actually implement some of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great thing about kind of going through that process and mapping it out on paper is to go, okay, then it's all about just building that out to the customer journey, right? You intimately understand, as Deidre just explained, the psychology behind what your customer, probably even better than they do, how they're making decisions, what they're feeling, and then you just build out, I'm sure a lot of you guys hear a lot about, funnels and things like that, but ultimately a funnel, whichever one you're designing, is really just, mapping out the journey that the customer is going on, but you're in control of actually leading them down the path to help them get to their point B. So basically it's really about, and what we're big advocates of, and, the strategy that we align with GrowthBoss is, how do you actually leverage, human connection, and kind of like tribe building, or really sort of connecting with people at that level to actually, and a big part of it is understanding their psychological buying process, but also connecting with them emotionally, as Deidre said, through painting the picture, and really bringing that to life for them. And then really the sales funnel part of it is really scaling it. So in terms of how we practically do this, because they sound like all really fun buzzwords, but how do we actually do this? I guess it's easiest to sort of bring it to life through our testing ground. So both of us, Deidre is also my co-founder in a new business called Make It Skincare. So we have recently launched this business to basically test all of these things that we're talking about. We've obviously iterated on quite a few different businesses earlier, but now we're doing it in an e-commerce sort of purely online business. And really what we're doing with Make It Skincare, part of the reason is also we want to test all of this theory and fail things very, very quickly on behalf of our clients before we teach them, and also share our learnings on a very practical level, but also, for us to really put into practice these things that we're talking about. So for example, one of the sales funnels that we put into place that leverages human connection is using Facebook groups. So it's very much about, skincare is skincare. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, I'm a skincare founder myself. I think my product's amazing, but ultimately it's about, as you said, the point A is for us, our customer feeling a certain way about their skin, and there's a certain point B they want to get to. But what we call the rolling launch funnel is, how do we actually provide them with value? If you go back to what Deidre was talking about earlier about, really high value things that you can provide your customers, and really kind of creating an event that they can attend to, whether that's for 3 days or 5 days or whatever, where they're going to get immense value out of something. So for example, with Make It Skincare, we're a fully natural skincare brand. Our target customer is all about wanting to lower the toxins in all the products they use in their life. So we actually host a Facebook group where we teach on a regular basis, or hold regular challenges around how to actually live a lower tox life. part of which is skincare. So there's a certain funnel where they see either this particular event being advertised, or they're invited along to this thing, and they come onto, they join the Facebook. Firstly they register, so that they get onto your email list. Then they come along and join your private Facebook group, so they're now in your Facebook land. We also run, obviously we keep them engaged in that, so then they become part of your community, and then we also ask them to refer their friends. And then really it's about going live into that group the way that we're doing now. You humanize the brand, you connect as a founder with your customers, and it's scalable because it's one-to-many. I'm not visiting people separately, I guess, to talk to them. It's this sort of intimate but digital environment that we're creating, and then suddenly you're really sort of starting to build a tribe and a community around your brand and your product, rather than just trying to sell them moisturizer. Of course, you will end up selling moisturizer because you're going to be talking about, adding value to them from a skill set perspective, and then your product just seems like a very natural thing for them to purchase. So that's one type of funnel that where a lot of product-based businesses aren't thinking about it that way. So that's something that we are building out and testing and iterating on as well. Another way is, I'm sure everyone's heard of lead magnets. There's a tried and tested and true, here's a free ebook, give me your email address. That's great. That's still worth doing. But one of the things that we're really excited about is using conversational commerce. So basically Facebook Messenger and chatbots, done a lot more intelligently than maybe what we might have experienced in the past. And again, it's another funnel whereby, they, you offer something of value where they might want to find out for Make It Skincare, like what their skin health score is. They go through a messenger funnel. Again, that means that you get them onto your messenger audience now. And then it's about, actually, would you like here's your results, depending on what score they get. And, if they're getting a lower score, our Bonna's going to jump on and chat to you about what some of the things that you can do to really, help with that. And again, so we're engaging with the customer in a very new and different way. They're in complete control of whether they want to engage in the conversation or not. It's not pushy. It's not any of those things, but it's scalable. You could be having conversations with your customers in your sleep, basically. So really all this is about is, again, this gives you data points, going back to what we were talking about. Are people clicking through? Are people engaging? Are people willing to give you their email address? All of these things, they're all currency. They're all things that you're testing to say, what does engagement and conversion look like for this particular product? So we continue to test that out, definitely with our own business, but also with our clients' businesses. And there's just, I'll probably stop there because we are running out of time. But, that's sort of where, I guess, the next stage of really scaling your brand kind of things. So, yeah.
I'm just looking, there's some questions here. So I'm just going back. Do you want to pick up some of those earlier questions?
Yes. Hi, Kadia. Did I say that right? I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. So I love that question. I'm going to try to answer it as quickly as possible. So you're absolutely right. There are so many variables, especially when it comes to even a very, very simple product. And especially if you've got a perfectionist mindset, you want to have all of that in place before you launch. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that you get to market as quickly as possible. And that may look like a soft launch, right? So a lot of, I guess, traditional, if you are into the whole like lean innovation, startup sort of culture, people talk a lot about MVP, which stands for minimum viable product. I'm more of a minimum desirable product kind of gal. So what we mean by that is you really want to list down, basically, when it comes to your solution, all of the different features, right, that people are telling you that's coming from your head of the things you could build. And it's really about prioritization. What is the most important thing that is a non-negotiable that needs to happen for, the majority of your customers? And again, here you need to be, it is a bit subjective in that it depends on how you define it, which is why currency and metrics is really important. But you need to arrive at like, okay, so this is the thing that isn't a must. The rest are nice to have. So it's a huge prioritization exercise. I would say from a marketing perspective, the nice to haves are actually an awesome, there's an awesome strategy where you use that as leverage to say, hey, you're like a founding kind of customer and you're going to get early access to these awesome new things, right? So don't lose the value of that, because that's got future value to say, this is just version 1. Like, you're going to get early access to this stuff, but right now we need your help and feedback on this. So that's how I would, in a very, very quick way, answer that question. And I'll quickly answer the other one as well from Tripti around how do you know how many of you, okay, another amazing question. It is difficult. It is difficult because, again, it really will come down to sort of, what your comfort levels are and the confidence interval that you want to go after. But I'm always a big fan of going when you're in the early stages, qualitative data is way more important because you really want to hear how your customer talks about the problem. You want to see them in their environment. So I always test in groups of 10 to say, okay, there's 10 people, usually get a really good range of 10 people. Once you get to the point where the really hairy sort of, you really start to get some information that's consistent, you want to be like, okay, then you want to scale. So then you could do things like, just run a very, very simple experiment where you spin up a landing page. It doesn't cost very much at all. You send some traffic to it. You try to, by this time, you've articulated your marketing messages, and then, you want to be able to communicate that without you having to visit each person and put it in front of them, right? So send them to this page. Again, be data driven. How many people are coming to the page? How many people are bouncing straight off? There's lots of free software that helps you go, okay, what page are people getting to? How many people are clicking through? How many people are purchasing? How many people are giving their email address? There's a bunch of things that you can test to give you a view of, okay, out of a sample of 1,000 people I went to, only 100 even bothered clicking through, which means there's probably not enough, if you know. So that's sort of like a little bit of a difficult question, but that's the almost the process you go through.
Awesome. And I'll pick up the next couple of questions. So could you talk about how to find the best marketing channel? This is, yeah. So really the starting point is where's your audience hanging out, right? Where are your customers? That's really that's going to be different depending on, the different businesses. What I would say almost as a blanket thing is that obviously Facebook and Instagram have right now the biggest platforms. That's where, they have billions of people on there. So that sort of almost seems like a no-brainer. But I know that as entrepreneurs as well, we get caught up in this, I call it the doubling syndrome, where kind of like you can't help but kind of be like, oh, I have to, because we get told, right? We get told by the Gary V's and everything else that we need to dominate the conversation, that we need to be everywhere. And ultimately, like, yes, you might want to, but that's kind of after a period of time once you focus. And that's why, in the GrowthBoss Academy, we really get our members to focus and build out particular funnels. And then you want to then broaden out what we call the top of the funnel. So if you start with fundamentally, where is your audience hanging out? And then once let's just say for argument's sake, that is Instagram, maybe Facebook. I kind of, would recommend starting with both if you're able to. You really sort of get your routine down around what you're doing on there, how you're getting the results. And then once that's down, then you go on to the next thing. So I don't know, is that TikTok? Is that Pinterest? Is that YouTube? Just choose the one next thing, do the same thing, get your routine, get your content, get that down, and then go on to the next thing. It's really hard, I know. I'm the same myself, to not almost force yourself to not be everywhere. It's super hard, but you kind of have to. Otherwise, you're not going to do yourself, let alone your customers, any favor, because you won't be able to do anything well. So that's really what we want to get into the practice of doing. We want to get into the practice of mastering. So let me know if that answers your question. And then how much of the psychological buying process do you integrate into the early experimental stage? Bona, do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah, these questions are amazing. I wish you had another half an hour. Thank you. I love that question. So it has to start there. It's almost like more important, I would say. Not to say that it's not important once you sort of have an established business, but if you go back to, I'm going to continue using Deidre as an example, because you really have to understand that she's obviously frustrated enough with the status quo that she's talking to someone about it, right? In this case was me. And you really need to understand kind of what is that mindset and that skill set what is the mindset that she is in right now, and what is getting in the way of her accessing the current available solutions. So she could have come to me, who's a personal stylist, but she didn't want to do that for a certain reason. She could have continued shopping on the e-commerce, and you know how many fashion e-commerce sites are available, right? And aggregators and things like that. But for whatever reason, that was getting in the way. You really need to understand what is what is currently blocking her, and she's not getting an optimal experience, to really then come up with a solution that's going to trump that. And then the emotion side is really, like if you ask Deirdre, she's going to talk about it from a very logical perspective, but the emotion, I guess, not seeing models that look like her and not being able to visualize it, the picture not being painted, was obviously a huge part of her not, I guess, ultimately giving that brand or that site her money. So I would say that's really, really important, especially when you're first coming up with the concept and the early stages of your idea. The blueprint needs to be on the psychographic profile of your ideal customer. So super important.
Awesome. And then Cindy, Facebook groups, yes. Do you do one that is specific to your brand or one that is named something different? Yeah. So what we tell our Academy members is that not to name the group after your brand, because that community, that tribe that you are building is all about them. It's actually not about you. I mean, it kind of is eventually about you, but it's really more about them. And so we kind of almost go down two paths. You can either build an identity, so you kind of corral the tribe, the group together through an identity. And a classic example of this is one of our clients is a chocolate retailer. And we named the group Chocoholics Anonymous, right? So it's kind of brought them together as like around an identity. The other way that you could do it is really about, again, thinking about point B, thinking about the result that you're trying to get them, is really naming the group after that. So an example is for Make It Skincare that Bona spoke about. We actually named that group Low Tox Living because that's ultimately what they're trying to move towards. They're trying to move towards a life where that's low in toxins. So that's kind of the two ways that we like to think about naming groups. You can very well say hosted by, presented by, with your company name, but that's the starting point is really that group, that tribe is about them. And then your company is almost the secondary thing. So I hope that helps, Cindy, in terms of how to name your group. I could talk about groups all day, so let me know. I'm definitely happy to pick that up. Awesome. Okay, so I think we're pretty much at time. Thanks for hanging out with us. I do just want to, if you did want to continue this conversation, we are actually holding a free challenge, 3-day challenge, a free event. It's called Cold to Converted. And you'll be able to walk away knowing exactly how to get paying customers for your brand and your products without spending any money on ads. So it's super cool. It's all about organically growing your business because a lot of us new entrepreneurs, we don't have a lot of money. So it's a really great way to be able to find out how you can actually start converting that cold audience into paying customers for your brand and your product. So please come join us. The link is at Bona.
Yep, I'll put it in the chat actually. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions for us? Or Julie, did you have any questions? I think you were going to hop back on. Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. It was completely our pleasure. Awesome, Cindy. I'm glad that answered it. And Shada, did I say your name? I hope I said your name right. Lisa. Thanks, Elise. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, I guess that's it from us then. Awesome. I hope that you guys enjoy the summit.
What?
We did that again, Bona, right, where we said different things.
We're so good, and then at the end we just talk over each other, and that's it. So. Sorry.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.